So it's performative and it's applied in its use rather than in the way people use it, rather than in some sort of thing beyond its actual use. Language only has meaning within its use and the way it's used between people. So what does this mean in terms of legitimation? So for light art, rules do not carry with them their own legitimation to objects of a contract. So if anyone studies ethics and morality, and what's absolute morality in terms of, if something absolutely wrong, is murder always wrong? And some people would say yes, because God said so. But according to language games, there's no God in this one. There's no sort of thing beyond language which says what language is. In terms of rules and legitimation, murder's wrong depending on its use relatively when we consider it wrong in our culture. If you kind of like fix it. It probably works a little bit more if we apply it, say, to descriptive statements. Because this is quite important for light art's use on science. When we say describe things to each other, say the glass example as well, and then someone says, okay, well you made a descriptive statement about glass and chlorophyll and that sort of thing, and then they say prove it. And I say, oh well, okay, get into the microscope and we'll take a look, and they say, okay, well prove that, and then can you prove the proof? And then you've got to prove the proof after that, and you never actually get anywhere. You never get some sort of like ground of reality. You're always constantly being deferred into other areas. I use the example in the Derrida thing as well. It's like a dictionary. If you go to open a dictionary and you start off on one word, can you say learn the language if you don't know it? If you look up all the other words to find out what the one word means, you can't. You just be moving around everywhere. If you want to find out what dig means and you're not English, and so you look at earth and you look at spade and all these type of things, then you have to look what they are up as well. You never actually come to some sort of ground of reality. I hope this is getting across. There are a few nods that really help. Thank you. Okay. It's good fun when you know it. You know, things like the chess example and stuff. That's a really good example. But if there are no rules, there is no game. This is another thing. So if there's no rules that we agree between each other, there is no game. Which is fair enough. We're just talking nonsense. You know. So people who speak English, they're playing by the rules of English. And if you don't play by the rules of English, you play by the rules of French, or your words will have no meaning. It's exactly the same. It's not analogous. If you say play football and then someone runs onto the field with a cricket bat, it just doesn't have an application. So you can once see again, language is like a tool to be used. Cricket bat does not work in football. They won't let you use it. She'll hurt someone. If there are no rules, there's no game. This is quite important. An infinitesimal modification of one rule alters the nature of the game. So when you introduce new words to the language, so a few years ago was some kids on the street started saying mingin and that type of thing, and this is how language kind of enters into just the general longer, just the language itself. It alters the rules of the game. Even if it's just a small degree. Once again, if you think of say if we only had two words in our entire language, things are either blip or either blot, and everyone's either saying blip or either blot. And this is blip and that's blot. And you don't even know if it's blip or blot. If you're within the language, you can't describe it. So that's what's blip or blot. They just know what it is. So things are either blip or blot, and then someone comes along and say kablang, and then he's got something new. So like whoa, and that changes the meaning of blip and blot, as well as introducing a new meaning, because words only have meaning in relation to other words. You need to understand what light is in relation to dark, etc. House is only a house because their sheds are not as good and mansions are much better. If you have one homogeneous word, then it will change. If new words come into the language, then things are just completely different. So that's quite important. If someone can set a new precedent for something as well, so for example, if I always use really political examples, but it's fine, it's a political bookshop. If America is able to invade a country and say, well, it's fine because it's a premeditative invasion, it's just in case they might attack us back, and they manage to get away with it, there's such a precedent which alters the rules of the game. Think of law, it's the same thing. The precedent enters into the way the law works. And you can see that, and that gives you also instantly a glimpse of how power comes into knowledge, the way you understand the world. And those who've got power can influence the language much better than those who don't. They can introduce words like minging, not war. So every utterance should be thought of then as a move in a game. Now, this is I think, the first principle you've got to understand about Lyotard. It's very interesting. If every utterance can be stood as a move in a game, then what does that suggest? It suggests competition in some sort of way. If you're playing chess against each other, it suggests you want to win. And even if you're just introducing words into the general language, if you're introducing just, I don't know, if I want to try to introduce a word in English and I want it to be widely known and widely used, I'd still have some sort of opponent, which is just the language in general, and I'll feel some sort of satisfaction overcoming that. There's read Nietzsche, it's quite similar. So, this last observation, this idea of being used into the game, brings us to the first principle underlying our methods as a whole. To speak is to fight. That's really quite strong, as I say, it's quite the same thing with Nietzsche and master and slave morality and will to power. But after Wittgenstein, it's completely different. For Lyotard, that's what speak is. To speak is to fight in the sense of playing and speech acts falls in the domain of a general agonistics. This does not necessarily mean one plays in order to win, but undoubtedly, even the pleasure of inventing new moves, phrases, uses, is won at the expense of at least one adversary, and the formidable one, the accepted language or connotation. And I just said that, that's whether it's to do with war, or that's whether it's to do with just introducing a new word into your playground. The same sort of linguistic structures of what sexual works. And what this also suggests as well, again, there's no sort of morality outside what war is, some kids can start scuffling in a park, and then some more kids join, and then some bring guns. At what point is it just a scuffle, and then at what point is it a war? Or they all try to they all try to change the language. So, Wittgenstein comes to say something quite similar actually later. He'll eventually say, at what point is a town when you've added more roads and more buildings and hospitals and things to it, and I don't know, one of those spaghetti things, motorways, etc. At what point does a town become a city? There's no sort of essence of town, there's no essence of city, there's nothing like that. There's no meta language, in other words. There's just this flat, spacey, weird thing. So the idea of an agonistics of language should not make us lose sight of the second principle. This is the second principle, which stands as a complement to it and governs our analysis, that the observable social bond is composed of language moves. So again, having this idea of knowledge and power. So we've got the way language works, we've got the sense of general agonistics, and now Lyotard's saying, well, you were probably quite sceptical of me first saying that knowledge is connected with power, because surely we should disconnect knowledge and power. Because if I say that grass is blue, you won't believe me. If I put a gun to your head and say grass is blue, you probably believe me a bit more, but in essence you probably still won't believe me. It's quite intuitive that the two are separate. But for Lyotard, it suddenly now looks quite, not just intuitive, but sensible. Has anyone suddenly changed their mind on this, if they thought otherwise? No, I don't think so. But the observable social bond is composed of language moves. The way we interact with each other is composed of language moves, it's composed of fighting. And we don't believe it, because a lot of the time it's quite friendly, but generally it is. So, in some sort of way. A self does not amount to much. That says but, I'm sorry. A self does not amount to much, but no self is an island. Each exists, this is a social bond by the way, how it works, sorry, it's just a description. Each exists in a fabric of relations that is now more complex and mobile than ever before. A person is always located at nodal points. That's a really interesting word, by the way, nodal. I'll come back to that in a second. Of specific communication circuits, however tiny these may be, or better, one is located at a post to which various kind of messages pass.